We only needed one. Hey everyone, it's Movie Lover Warren 20 here, and I'm here with this brand new video, and this video is going to be for kind of like the other certain two videos, top 11 videos I did back around last year. And it was, I did this subject twice, and now this is going to be the third and final video where I do this subject. And as for the top 11 movies that did not need sequels, because there is technically more than just 11 of these movies, there is so many films that could have just stayed standalone films or just stopped at a certain installment, but they kept going and ruining the impact of their predecessors or the first one. So yeah, this video is going to be for one more top 11 movies that did not need a sequel, and this will be the last one I'm doing because I don't need to make a bunch of these. But with that being said, yeah, this one is going to be, some of these were often sequels on my other lists. This one is kind of going to be more original movies. Only two of them will be sequels on this list, so yeah. But like the last two lists, this list usually covers movies that were just perfect standalone movies or just perfect finales to their franchises that did not need to be covered again, but the studios got greedy and ruined the impacts of the originals, or ruined the great endings of a certain installment that could have ended the franchise on a high note, but the studio got greedy and decided to make more of these because they kept getting money out of these franchises. Or just wanted more money because the first ones got them money. So yeah, anyway, with that being said, let's get started on this whole one last top 11 of this list. Kicking off at number 11 is for a movie that, while I do like two of these sequels, I wish it was just only one movie because only one movie of this worked. And that is, of course, Predator. Now, this was probably one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time, and Predator 2 and Predators are okay movies, but they don't come anywhere close to this perfect standalone concept about this team of soldiers that end up this conflict with this alien creature that does not plan on taking any of them alive during a mission in this jungle, and now they have to try to basically turns all of a sudden into this big survival mode where they have to survive before getting torn to pieces one by one. Yeah, it's just this was kind of just a perfect standalone movie. The sequels, Predator 2 and Predators, were pretty good, but the 2018 Predator was absolutely abysmal. The sequels had one problem. The creature, the Predator, just became this big anti-hero where he basically just mostly killed bad people. In this movie, he was no anti-hero. He was a villain all the way through. He didn't care about if you were good or bad. You were just dead either way on the spot. It was just perfect that way. And the sequels kind of ruined the Predator characters. And the crossover specifically also ruined the Predator characters, especially with the first AVP movie, having the Predator team up with a human being to take down the alien queen. It's just a stupid, ludicrous idea. Yeah, but now I love Predator 2, but it was just a rehash of the first one, and Predators is also kind of a bit of a rehash of the first one, except it kind of ends on a random abrupt ending, and with some characters. But now, while Predator 2 and Predators were pretty good sequels, the Predator 2018 is an absolute pile of shit, and I have no hope for this fifth one that Disney's going to be doing. I think it's called Skulls or whatever it is, but I've heard negative reactions to this new fifth one they're going to be doing so far. So Predator 2 and Predator's okay, but I kind of wish this franchise was really just the first one. Kicking off at number 10 is going to be Disney Pixar's Cars. Now, Cars may be the weakest Pixar movie, but I don't think it's as terrible as some people make it out to be. I mean, it's got a pretty good, decent story. Story here, pretty much about this hotshot race car who gets waylaid in this town in the middle of nowhere where he finds kind of the true meaning of friendship and family. He kind of learns not to be so selfish. He kind of learns to care about others every once in a while. It's a pretty decent story. But it's only a decent story that works just the one time. Now, unfortunately, because this movie made so much money at the box office, which is typical for Pixar standards, and made so much money in merchandising, Disney was like, hey, so we got so much money, let's go make several more of these bitches. We got a whole bunch of short films, and we got a critically despised sequel with Cars 2 in 2011. It did make more money at the box office, but it's often known as the most hated Pixar movie of all time. And then we got Cars 3, while better than Cars 2, doesn't even that didn't come close to the first one, but Cars 3 kind of wish was Cars 2, but the damage was kind of already done with the actual Cars 2 we got. I'm sorry, James Bond, Cars themed? No, that does not work. It doesn't work at all. That's unrelated to Cars in any kind of way. Yeah, but honestly, I think even Pixar saw they couldn't really go anywhere else with the first one. I really don't think, because it's kind of considered one of the weaker Pixar films, I don't think they really could go anywhere better with this, with 2 and 3. So, while Cars 3 was decent, at least it kind of made up for Cars 2. After that disaster, regardless what I think of Cars 3, yeah, I really think Cars 1 should have just stayed by itself on its own. Kicking off at number 9 is Basic Instinct. Yep, this somehow got a sequel. Now, see, now same comments with films like Speed, The Hangover, or Taken. When you have this 1992 movie that has a whole lot of sexual moments, but actually has kind of a unique, genius, chilling concept about a violent police detective who investigates a brutal murder that might involve a manipulative and seductive novelist. So yeah, that's actually kind of a decent concept. I mean, yeah, the movie does have a whole number of sex scenes, but that's what do you expect? This is directed by Paul Verhoeven, who's known for making very graphic movies like RoboCop, Total Recall, and yeah, like I don't know what you'd be expecting. Of course, this is going to be a graphic movie, but despite all the number of sex scenes this has, it's a pretty good concept, I gotta say. But you can only do this concept once. Apparently, because this movie was very profitable at the box office, like most movies have this problem, they tried going ahead and making a sequel and kept running into so many struggles, which all should have been signs that they should never have made this to begin with. The movie would be called Basic Instinct 2 Risk Addiction. It went on to be released 14 years too late in 2006. It's one of the most hated sequels in cinema, and just one of the most hated movies of the 2000s in general. Like, even Michael Douglas, like, I think they were going to get Michael Douglas to come back, even though his character may have, regardless of whatever happened to his character again. But even with this concept, it was like, no, I'm done with this bullshit. Good luck, Sharon. Yeah, Basic Instinct is just a movie that only worked on its own. It's a nice concept that only just worked once. You don't, yeah. With this film like this, don't try to over shock value audiences with a bunch of sex scenes twice. No, that's not how things work. I'm sorry, but even Paul Verhoeven hated this sequel, and this would pretty much go on to make only $5 million domestically at the box office, and pretty much run so many Razzies. So, in short, this movie has a better title, this sequel anyways, and that's basically It Stinks 2. Kicking off at number 8 is Kingsman: The Secret Service. So, see the comments I made with Cars earlier. You have this actually out of nowhere spy movie about a spy organization that recruits a promising kid into their training program during the time a global threat emerges from a twisted tech genius, and it randomly becomes a box office smash, gets so loved by critics, and it becomes a new staple for Matthew Vaughn. Yeah, if you're gonna try to do that twice, please don't undo a certain death from the first film, and please don't kill off half your cast for this sequel, because that's exactly what this sequel did. Now, making a sequel to Kingsman actually seems like a genius idea, but Kingsman: The Golden Circle was such a disappointment. Compared to the first one, there were so many problems. Like, somehow all the characters from the first one are killed off, minus Merlin and Eggsy. And of course, Harry somehow survived his death in the first one for stupid reasons possible. Now, regardless, and we now had a prequel that seems to have nothing to do with the first two at all. And I would have rather seen a third one that hopefully redeems Golden Circle and completes Harry's story on a good note, but Kingsman: The Secret Service, yeah, I kind of wish Kingsman the Secret Service kind of just worked on its own and the ending was just left ambiguous to wonder whatever happened at the end of it. Kicking off at number 7 is Legally Blonde. Now, another, pretty much another one of these standalone movies concept. You have this fashionable sorority queen who gets dumped by her boyfriend and decides to go to law school to win him back, but she discovers there's a little more throughout her journey she'll have to learn than just pretty looks. So yeah, that's pretty much a nice little decent standalone story that works perfectly on its own. And since of course that movie becomes a box office success, launches Reese Witherspoon's career, makes her a little more famous, and of course gains a cult following among certain filmgoers. And of course, let's just, but of course, don't try to undo your happy endings in the first one. And if you're going to make a sequel, don't pull an Alien 3 on the character, not as in Kill Us, but certain events of the first one, because Legally Blonde 2, Red, Wine, and Blonde actually kind of pulls that off in there. Because in the very beginning of the sequel, Elle Woods basically ends up kind of throwing away her job, her hard work job that she worked hard for in the first one, because of this whole grooming thing, and we're trying to reunite her Chihuahua Bruiser with his mom. So yeah, that it's pretty much an example. If it's one of the biggest quality bad falls of sequels. If you are ever going to make a sequel, don't undo your happy endings and don't make the happy endings of the first film pointless, like exactly this sequel does. And apparently, we're getting a decades too late third one, which I'm hearing nothing about, and I've got kind of no hope for because it's basically another decades way too late sequel. So, honestly, I kind of wish Legally Blonde just stayed on its own. That's how it should have been. Kicking off at number 6 is Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Now, with this film in 1989, this is yet another great standalone film where you have this scientist who has two kids of his own, and there's also his neighbor also has another two kids of his own, and he accidentally causes an accident that kind of accidentally shrinks his kids and his neighbor's kids, and now his kids and neighbor's kids have to resolve their differences and work together to try to get back and get their father to restore them to normal size, while his father and wife also look for them. Don't you dare try to pull that off twice. Damn sure don't try to pull it off 3 times. Because Honey, I Blew Up the Kid and Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves are both horseshit sequels. I mean, now like Honey, I Blew Up the Kid basically now has the same character Wayne now has a 2-year-old son named Adam, and instead of accidentally shrinking him, he just then grows him to larger size, and you think he would have learned his lesson about trying to shrink anything after this movie, but nope, he still keeps the shrink machine, and now Adam kind of goes on this giant exploring rampage while not trying to harm really anybody throughout this whole city. And then you got Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves in the third one, where was banned from using his shrink machine, but he still secretly kept it anyway, and he accidentally shrinks himself, his brother, his wife, and his brother's wife. Nope, I'm sorry. Nobody who watched this movie's buying that. Nope. Now, well, like with Honey Blue the Kid, it's like, hey, let's make Honey Blue the Kid a little more intense, make it a little darker this time, especially for something like Honey I Shrunk the Kids that was a family friendly movie. So, Honey I Shrunk the Kids, I loved it, but I kind of wish in this world there was only the one movie that existed. Kicking off at number 5 is The Butterfly Effect. Why in damn hell did you stupid assholes ever touch this? Especially with none of the original filmmakers or cast members involved. Like, you have this one of those few critically despised movies that is liked by audiences and actually has a pretty nice little concept for a time travel movie where this guy that Ashton Kutcher plays suffers blackouts during significant events of his life, and he keeps trying to find a way to undo all those tragic moments, but they end up leading to even more disasters. Which is a very nice kind of little scenario. But of course, but somehow for a reason, New Line, other people decide to go, hey, let's make some largely unrelated sequels and put this little effort into it. We'll just slap on them as sequels so that we'll get a few pennies from other people who enjoyed this movie. And then some which New Line Cinema made Butterfly Effect 2. No one liked it, but then somehow Lionsgate and After Dark films, with their 8 films to Die for Horror Fest, somehow had the nerve decided to go do a similar thing and slap, well, had the concept of the two movies but had no relation to any of the first two at all, and decided to market that as a third? No, like, with like Butterfly, if with Butterfly Effect, you probably could have made like a decent prequel about Ashton Kutcher's character's father. You probably could have made like a decent little spin-off set before the first film. But two unrelated sequels without Ashton Kutcher's involvement or have no connection to the first film and an entirely different cast? Nope. That is those not getting Ashton Kutcher back and getting no actors whose careers are nowhere is basically a warning sign you should not be touching something like the Butterfly Effect. Kicking off at number 4 is Kick-Ass. Again, like this, just like with Kingsman, The Secret Service, although kind of in a little bit of a way. You have another great superhero parody movie about a kid who like wants to be a superhero, who actually loves comic books and is a big fan of comic books. He decides to become a superhero one day, getting so sick of crime never being stopped, but then also starts to see the dangers that come with it, while also finding two other wannabe superheroes that he also ends up kind of teaming up with. And they have to go take down this big crime boss in their city, who the two sidekicks he has are after. So yeah, same comments with Kingsman and Secret Service. If you are gonna make, like, honestly, I get the comic book had sequels, but the comic book was set about a year after the first comic. So honestly, if you were gonna make Kick-Ass 2, you should have just made this like a year after, or maybe even 2012. You could have been able to do a sequel to this, but you really should. It was really foolish to be waiting 3 years later, when almost all the cast was grown up, to be finally making a sequel to this and making it largely unrelated to the comic book because some certain actors don't want to act out violent scenes. And like, I mean, the first one was perfectly balanced. It perfectly balanced all the gory nature of the comic and a little more of a goofier nature this time around to make it a little less dark. But Kick-Ass 2, don't try to go all lighthearted with this please, and then, because yeah, that does not work for an R-rated character like Kick-Ass. So if you're gonna make a sequel, I'm sorry, should have did this in 2011 or 2012 when you guys had the chance, not 3 years later in 2013 when almost everybody was grown up. Kicking off at number 3 is Record, a Spanish horror movie about a reporter and cameraman who end up getting quarantined in this apartment building with something extremely sinister and terrifying along with a bunch of other residents. Now, Record is one of those big surprises, especially for a Spanish horror movie and for a found footage movie in general. It becomes one of the scariest movies ever made and actually becomes so beloved by horror fans. But for some reason, now we have a good decent sequel called Record 2. That doesn't come close to Rec 1, but it actually is still kind of a decent sequel, at least it's still found footage. But trying to give this a third and fourth film that are not found footage movies, nope, I'm sorry. What happened here? Record 3 is a big what the fuck sequel ever. It has nothing to do with 1 or 2. I absolutely hated that movie to death. And it tries to be all funny all of a sudden. And then you have Record for Apocalypse, which did try to go back to the story of the first two movies, but it still did not follow the found footage format. And it basically ends up randomly becoming some big zombie action movie that just did not work for me. And we even have a shot-for-shot remake called Quarantine, which was basically an American version of the movie, and it wasn't even that good either. And I have not seen the direct-to-DVD sequel called Quarantine 2 Terminal, so I can't say anything about it, but Record wasn't really like Saw. I never saw this big franchise. I only just saw Record worked better as just a one really scary-ass found footage movie. It really just did not work as a franchise. I mean, Record 2 was actually a pretty decent continuation of Record 1, but I kind of wish Record 1 was just Record 1 and only Record 1 alone. Kicking off at number 2 is Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. What was Disney thinking, trying to keep on making these anyway, after doing 2 back-to-back sequels, apparently decided to keep making more of these sequels 4 years after this movie, even though there was no reason to do so, because at Pirates at World's End, I mean, yeah, People can say what they want about 2 and 3, but Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest I do prefer over Curse of Black Pearl, but Curse of Black Pearl is also equally good. At World's End may have been the weakest of the Pirates movies, but it was still a very good way to end off the whole series. It was a good way to wrap up Will and Elizabeth's story arc, even wrap up Jack's story arc so you can close the book in the franchise. Maybe you can like prequel Curse of Black Pearl, but there is no reason to continue on from the end of this movie. But that's not what Disney thought. Because Disney thought they could make more money on their hands and keep doing even more of these films shortly after World's End, not even bothering to trade even White 10 years or so. They decided to go 4 years after this movie and go on with On Stranger Tides. They ditched Will and Elizabeth. They were not even in the movie, but it was just a boring movie, and Dead Man Tell Tales was just an absolutely pitiful disgrace where they made Jack Sparrow a complete drunk bum the whole movie, which makes honestly no sense, undoes all the sacrifices from At World's End, and has a hint of bringing back Davy Jones. So, I think they might even be trying to reboot the series thanks to Amber Heard. And I don't want to watch the reboot. So, Pirates of the Caribbean, first one was awesome, second one's even better, and third one's good, not as good as 1 or 2, but I really wish At World's End was how the series just wrapped from there on, because there was no reason to keep making more of these after World's End. And the number one movie on this list that should have gotten 0 sequels and where its franchise should have stopped for good after this one film, and that is of course Furious 7. Now with this movie, people can say Fast and Furious 6 should have ended the series. This one's a little overhyped, but you guys can say what you want, but this movie was a good tribute to Paul Walker, and it was a beautiful send-off to his character, because for me, the series was always about Paul Walker. I mean, yeah, Dominic was kind of somewhat of a protagonist, but Paul Walker's Brian was the real protagonist and hero of this franchise. And this was a good way, since this was made after his unfortunate passing, this was a good send-off to his character arc, and everybody else's character arcs too, but of course, welcome to Universal and welcome to Hollywood these days, where we still need to keep making more of these. They were like, no, the story's not over here. Let's make an 8th, and then somehow let's go make a 9th. So that does not work for me, because Fate of the Furious just undoes this. Fate of the Furious basically has Dom betraying his family, working with this terrorist named Cypher, which I am not buying, and no fan is buying that stupid idea. And then you got one of the most recent ones last year, which was F9 The Fast Saga, which undid so many stuff in this movie, such as bringing back Han, bringing Mia out of retirement, and even hinting to be bringing Brian out of retirement for now what's going to be a 10th, 11th, and I think even a 12th. Which I will be avoiding those, because F9 was the final nail in the coffin of this series. I wish they had just left us alone with Furious 7. So yeah, Fast and the Furious, this franchise should have really just stopped with Furious 7, and I wish, Universal would have actually had the brain to leave it alone after the 7th movie, purely. Alright, and there we go. That's pretty much wraps up the whole top 11 movies that did not need a sequel series. So now I do plan to do a trilogy or a video where I cover the top movies that do deserve a sequel, because I still need to cover that topic. But this wraps up this whole trilogy of series. This is the last one I'm going to be doing. But yeah, so I want to know down below which films on this list do you agree with or have seen, and I really hope that, but whatever, I'm struggling to say stuff, but until then, that'll be it for this video. Thank y'all for watching, and if you'd like to want to see more, then don't forget to like, subscribe to Movie Lover 120.